Thank you very much. That teed it up quite well, thank you. I think at the end of the day, Seriously is trying to be an IP company more than we're trying to be a games company. Granted, the games have to be world-class, so the whole thing is dead on arrival, but ultimately, it is about that IP. And we think the focus on IP is correct because Hollywood is broken, and this is a new formula to make it happen and to kind of take content, stories, characters, and worlds out to people everywhere around the globe. 2 quick seconds on me. I spent about 12 years at 20th Century Fox at the film and TV studio, so dealing with big IP. Avatar to Ice Age, to Walk the Line, to The Day After Tomorrow, to Sons of Anarchy, to Family Guy. For the last bit of my time there, I did run the day-to-day games unit, so for mobile games, and those are a couple of the games that we did. So we did see great success with IP coming into mobile games, but ultimately we felt like there was really a space to create original IP and build a business from there. That was the founding premise of Seriously, and at the end of the day, just as we were kind of just getting going, this is the question we asked and the question we always ask: what would Uncle Walt do? And so if you think about it with Walt Disney, what did he do? He wanted to get a story out to the world, and he picked, really, in his time and in his day, the most technologically advanced way to reach the most amount of people in the most polished way possible. We think now that that's mobile, and it's mobile games. So we thought a lot about when we were founding the company, again, what would Walt Disney do? How can he actually get his stories and his characters and his worlds out to people nowadays if he was starting just now? We'll give it a second here. If I could poll the audience just very quickly, how many people have heard of Best Fiends? How many, and heard of, how many have played Best Fiends? Wow, right on, fantastic, that's good. So what would Walt do? And again, our premise is that Walt Disney, if he was creating Mickey Mouse and creating all of his wonderful worlds and characters, he would do that today on mobile, and specifically with mobile phone games. And why? Some pretty obvious points, but mobile is the most widely distributed platform in the world. We think it's the primary and #1 media consumption platform for anybody, anywhere. And games are really, an immense amount of time spent on that platform, probably just second to social, and kind of the rise of Snapchat and WhatsApp and all these sort of messaging apps. Walt Disney chose animated shorts. He could get that out in a big way in his time. We think it would be mobile today. This is more the heart of our premise, ultimately. So we think the traditional Hollywood model is outdated. So this is essentially a life cycle of a Hollywood, take a film primarily. This life cycle could happen over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Film comes out, lots of marketing, tons of money goes into it, but it's a bit of a blind swing, right? You can't get it out and road test the IP. You can't see if people like it until you're $100 million deep into it and another $75 million deep into the marketing campaign of it. Then it goes out, and it's an exhibitor. So you go to see an AMC, you go to a Landmark Theater, you go to a theater chain in China. You don't own that consumer relationship. It goes in the home entertainment window. The DVD is sold through Walmart. The EST, the electronic sell-through copy, is sold through iTunes. Again, you as the IP holder and the person who created the IP owns the franchise. You're disintermediated. It goes into later windows. It's on HBO, it's on Netflix, it's on Hulu, it's on whatever else, it's on Sky Italia, it's on Star TV Asia. It plays out over a long period of time. Your consumer gets a little tired of it. There's nothing new and fresh in the world. You're not introducing new characters, and you don't own the consumer. Ultimately, we think that it's better to be vertically integrated, a live service directly connected to consumer, and mobile is a perfect platform for this, and mobile games are a perfect platform for this. Instead of a new Ice Age movie every 3 years, which is what we did at Fox, we have a new Best Fiends update every 3 weeks. And for us, that update is treated a little bit like a movie launch. Always a big marketing campaign, new icon, new key art, let alone new levels, new features. But for us, the front end of that, the new icon, the new key art, the new premise, is just as important as the 15 new levels we stick at the end of the game. We want to make sure people feel like there's always something fresh in our IP, that it's always new and always evolving, because it's a big contrast to what the big studios put out. I think Walt Disney got this, and I think that this is really important as well, too, particularly in the game space. It's great to make a game. There are wonderful games out there. Sometimes you go upstream and license a brand to try and get a little more run, a little more pre-awareness built into it. Sometimes you stumble on a great mechanic and you make puzzle game 1, puzzle game 2, puzzle game 3, puzzle game 4. It's great to create a network that way, and there's value there. Ultimately, though, what Walt Disney saw and what I think some of the Hollywood studios have done really well, and what we're trying to do, is to create brands. Brands, franchises, and IP. defensible, extensible, scalable, all those kind of great, wonderful acronyms and words and cliches, but it really is true. Ultimately, if you have a Star Wars, you have a Marvel, you have a Minions, you have a Despicable Me, you have an Angry Birds, you have a Clash of Clans. There's millions of different ways you can exploit that because ultimately the brand keeps people coming back, has an emotional connection for them. And lastly, and this is what Disney does wonderfully well, and whether it was intentional with Walt Disney or whether it wasn't, but the idea that you can create a core piece of IP and build a complete hub and spoke model off of it, there is immense value in this, and it's well beyond the vision for just a single game. But this is incredibly relevant for mobile, which is, again, why we think that that's the new formula for creating IP. You can do all of this and hub it off of the game. You can watch the video via the game. You can buy the toy via the game. You can do all the social stuff via the game. You can have a second game that comes out in that same world and just extends the mythology and extends the interaction. We're not here by any stretch of the imagination, but this is where we want to go, and we think there's a massive opportunity if we get it right. So how? That's always the big question, right? It's all good and well to say this. I think we all kind of get that strategic value of it. But how do you do it? Because it's hard, right? I think something I want to call out before I move on to the next slides, I'm not going to talk about game mechanics, engines, technology stacks, any of that. To a certain extent, and I don't want to belittle it, but that stuff is sort of, you can handle it. You can make great sort of mechanical, great games that don't fail. It's easier said than done, clearly. But what we're trying to focus on here are things that aren't just about the fact that our line matching game is really nice and polished and slick. These are things above and beyond that, which we think translates from just a game into IP. The 4 C's. This is really, how do you tell a story? How do you build characters and franchises and worlds that people care about? Again, a bit cliched, but this is really how Hollywood approaches it. And this is why, if we can do what they do, but bring it to a platform that we think is more relevant for today's market and today's consumers, we think we might be onto something. Character, context, conflict, comedy. And what I will say is a credit to our co-founders. They had these before they had the game. They had built out the world. The meteor comes down and strikes Mount Boom. It awakens the slugs. This is all based actually on our co-founder who lives in Helsinki, Finland. We're split between Helsinki and Los Angeles. In the summer, he was invaded by garden slugs, and they're about the size of my index finger. They're really big. I mean, they're huge, actually. And in Finland, you're very, very protected about your summer, so you get about 2 months of sunshine, and it's it's kind of a big deal. And so he had his daughters go out and would have a bounty on the slugs. And it got him thinking, they wouldn't kill him, they'd sort of put him in a bucket in a nice sort of ecological way, go put him in the forest. But it got him thinking about big conflicts at small scale and how things, you can miss things that might not be apparent to the naked eye, but could still be very intense, legendary, and epic. So anyway, the meteor comes down, hits Mount Boom, the slugs come to life, the slugs run out and voraciously invade the world. They come and they kidnap some of our fiends, and then our little guys here need to level up, become the heroes within themselves, and restore balance to the world. Pretty straightforward story, but again, to their credit, Andrew, Petri, the core team in Helsinki, had this before they had the game. I remember sitting with Andrew, our CEO, in a bad sushi restaurant in the San Fernando Valley, and he showed me this, and he was still 2 months away from being able to show me a game. And I thought that was fantastic, right? That they'd actually approached this in a way where the story and the context and the characters came first. Granted, they knew that they wanted to have an RPG element to the game, so fantastic. The characters level up from sort of really cute to fiendish. They go on a character's journey. They go on a hero's journey. They knew that they wanted to have a balance of kind of conflict and comedy. The slugs are perfect for it. But ultimately, they went down this path before they had developed the game. And we feel like it's a universal story. Again, maybe it sounds hyperbolic to say that it's a hero's journey, et cetera, but it is about growing up, and there are some universal elements to that go into any good story. That's JoJo, one of our kind of strong female leads in the game. Actually, she sort of evolves from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Style and tone, we spend a lot of attention to this. We pay a lot of attention to it, rather. So subversive yet sweet, something for adults and kids. Again, these are sort of tropes and cliches that you hear coming out of Hollywood, but we felt like it hadn't been seen yet in mobile games, where it was more about the puzzle matching mechanic than it was about the tone of the IP and the characters you're interacting with. World-class talent. We feel like we found incredibly talented people, and they're incredibly talented people the world over. And again, we feel like we can break away from the myopic nature of Hollywood, where it's just between the 405 and the 110 freeway, maybe a little bit into the valley along the 101. But there are a world of great storytellers and great character builders and world designers out there, and we want to partner with the best of them. One kind of small example of that is the gentleman right in the middle, Heitor Pereira. So he's actually, weirdly enough, was the lead guitarist for Simply Red back in the 80s and 90s, and lovely, lovely guy. Now scores major motion pictures. And as we founded the company, Andrew went around and asked different game CEOs like what to spend time on and what not to spend time on. And every one of them said, forget the music, nobody cares, outsource that, open source it, whatever you want to do with it. And we kind of said, well, actually it makes a difference. TV shows, movies, the Star Wars theme, the Raiders theme, Raiders of the Lost Ark theme, whatever else it is, it really brings emotion up. And so we went to Heitor and paid a little bit of money, not as much as you would think, and then he composed the score. We recorded it with a 65-piece live orchestra. Again, not as expensive as you think. It just takes a little more effort and a little more forethought. And we feel like it's there. Like we feel like there's a richness in the sound that then helps to develop the rest of the world. Social, take it seriously. God, bad pun, but intentional pun, I guess. We see it as brand building. When I was at Fox, I can't tell you how many of the game companies we came to would use social as a player support channel. That's all fine and well. We do that if we answer and read every single message on social. If something comes in that's a QA issue, it goes right into our player support channel. But that's not what social is. Social is about brand building and player interaction and constant communication. We do literally bespoke art every single day of the week for Instagram and for Facebook. We do a unique Snapchat story once a week. We're on VK in Russia, we're on Weibo. This is a channel where you can be directly connected to your consumer, and it's light years ahead of what the Hollywood studios are looking at it. The Hollywood studios see this as another way to plug their special edition DVD. They're just slowly coming around to the idea that they could actually use this as a way to build their franchise and continue that interaction. Market differently. Much like you're not going to see any game mechanics for the slides in here, you're not going to see any CPI, UA, typical performance marketing. We do that, it's fine, it's a way to stay competitive, it's a way to buy profitable users, but ultimately the way we're going to be different is if we think creatively on our marketing. And we've done a lot of things with YouTube influencers, because again, it's something where there's this level of trust and authenticity where you can build a relationship more so. People come into Rosanna Pansino because they love her and they literally see her as like their older sister, their best friend, whatever else it is too. We can borrow some of that and then we can build some of that too. It's not just a banner ad in your Facebook feed. There's a lot more emotional connection made with this. And then company culture, it sounds trite, but if you do the right thing, if you do well by doing good, people can tell. Your fans can tell. We've done a lot of things with charity, which quite honestly have been fantastic for the game. And all the typical game metrics, our most profitable days have been when we've had the charity races inside the game. Our highest engagement dates have been those. It's fantastic, but ultimately at the end of the day, we have done things that have had legitimate charitable impact. And it's been good for us as we build a company culture, and it's been good for our fans as they come into our world and want to interact with our characters more. So one small example just is the mosquito character up there. That's Edward in a very LA twist. He's given up blood and now drinks coconut water from a tank on his back. And so we actually now deep link into Malaria No More via Edward. And so we actually send them on a daily basis more traffic than any other source they've ever had. Just little bits and pieces. It feels really organic. It's something that we know works for malaria, works for our player base, and works for us as we try and figure out what kind of company we want to be going forward. So I ran through all that pretty quickly just to leave time for questions, but hopefully that made a little bit of sense, and thank you.
Thank you, Matt. You were mentioning that you don't have key performance indicators in your talk, and I'm wondering, I'm going to go ahead and say that I agree wholeheartedly, like the intellectual property is everything. How do you measure success?
Absolutely, great question. Right now it's two things, and it has been from the founding of the company. It's engagement and retention. Yeah, we definitely pay attention to the monetization metrics, that's not to say it, but the ones that take priority are engagement and retention. Are people sticking around the game? Are they playing the game? Do they like the game? Is the game fun? Ultimately, we're going to take that view of it, which is a little bit, we think, a little bit more of a long-term view of the vision. I think we want to try and build up equity in Best Fiends 1, because there will be a Best Fiends 2. Hopefully the franchise is around for quite a while, and if people are having fun with it, if they're coming back to it, that's fine. We're not going to put the screws to them to monetize them straight away. Maybe they pay in Best Fiends 2, maybe they pay in Best Fiends 3, maybe they buy the toy from Kid Robot. That's what we've been focused on entirely from the beginning.
So you don't, like, say, use Q-score, for example?
No, but we certainly, I mean, look, we pay attention to all the typical monetization metrics too, and see where we are, trying to optimize what our ad yield is and where our IAP, you know, different sort of things. But we're not going to pay gate. We're not going to do forced view ads. We're really, it's about our people spending time in the game. Ultimately, in the US, we have people spending on a daily basis about 35 to 37 minutes. For us, we love that because our comp for that isn't another puzzle game. Our comp for that is that it's a sitcom and a half. So they're in our world, engaging with our brand, enjoying our characters for the equivalent of a sitcom and a half, if you think of it 22 before commercials. So that's what we love. That's what we're trying to kind of engender, the ability to be in our world and be deep in our world. And the first game is just the tip of the iceberg. We'll have original animations and more licensed product and things that will really kind of round it out so you'll be able to experience the world in more ways. The first game, again, like I said, is just the tip.
Hi, I was wondering about some of the social media work that you do. Are you able to track the installs and return on that, and then see what your actual long-term retention is based on that?
We wish we could. We don't now, but we wish we could. I think that what we do pay a lot of attention with, and this is both through our own social, but then as we buy and market through social, particularly YouTube, interaction rates. Likes, shares, retweets, whatever that ends up being, that for us is really, really critical. Number of comments that we reply to and kind of engender a conversation. We can't, unfortunately, kind of cookie from our Facebook posts a like all the way back down. It'd be fantastic if we could. But it really is, are people enjoying it? What are those interaction rates? Also, I mean, just anecdotal data points. I mean, there's now 3 organic Best Fiends fan groups on Facebook, which is fantastic, right? I mean, we nurture them. You know, if there's there's been actually a couple sick children. All of a sudden, a big sort of bag of plush toys go out to them. There's one marriage proposal that happened because of Best Fiends, which is fantastic. And if they invite us, we'll go to France happily for it. So some of it's anecdotal, quite honestly. But when you see, I mean, we're now 850,000 fans on Facebook. You know, that's a decent community, and it's a very engaged community. So again, it's more about those engagement metrics. Just do people like the post? Do they respond to what we're doing? Rather than are they actually like almost an install back to the game.
Are you relying on that? I guess it is an organic channel. Are you relying on that for a bigger chunk of your users?
We aren't. No. So the marketing that we do in social, certainly. I mean, our YouTube influencer marketing is our number one volume, as well as sort of our number one focus in terms of an acquisition channel. The work we do with Rosanna Pansino, Markiplier, or other YouTube personalities, that we rely on considerably, which is a whole different type of talk, because we've gone pretty deep into that space of it. The social stuff we do, the daily Facebook posts, the daily Instagram posts, it's really just to nurture the community.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Matt, will you marry me?
I'm sorry?
Will you marry me?
Oh, you can find my wife if you want to. It's sort of.
There's an engagement metric joke in there somewhere, but now you've got 2 marriage proposals thanks to Best Fiends.
Well, it was funny in The Simpsons Tapped Out, which I worked on, somebody actually did, he stole his girlfriend's phone and had the password and sort of wiped out the entire Springfield, and with the hedges wrote, "Will you marry me?" And she said yes, but then posted to Reddit later that she was still kind of annoyed that he destroyed her town. Luckily, there was a save,
some
and it all kind
stalker
of came
level
back,
behavior
right?
there. I would.
This isn't quite, because
nuts.
we don't have quite the same kind of game. This is actually just, I guess they were in a cafe and she was playing Best Fiends too much and kind of ignoring him on the date, and then her phone ran out of batteries, and he said, well, why don't you come back to my house to charge it? And one thing led to another, and you know, we're waiting on the invitation.
That's very charming. Everybody, let's give it up for Matt McMahon.
Thank you.
Seriously?